The vast chamber of the Galactic Empire's diplomatic hall fell silent as the human representative walked in. The Empire's officials, dressed in their shining ceremonial robes, looked down from their elevated platforms at the simple black suit worn by the human diplomat, John Miller, the Grand Chancellor of the Empire. A tall being with metallic skin leaned forward. His voice boomed through the chamber. "So, these are the primitives from the Outer Rim, the ones who still use combustion engines and basic spaceflight." John Miller stood calmly, hands behind his back. His gray hair and weathered face showed years of diplomatic experience. The chamber's lighting cast long shadows across the polished floor as he waited for the Empire's full attention. "We come with a simple message," Miller spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "Earth and its colonies wish to remain independent. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if needed." Laughter erupted from the gathered officials. The Grand Chancellor raised a hand, causing immediate silence. "Defend yourselves. With what? Your primitive weapons. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Our ships darken the skies of 1,000,000 worlds." Miller didn't flinch. "We've studied your empire's history. You've never faced humans before. This is your only warning. Leave Earth's space, or face the consequences." The Empire's war minister stepped forward, his red armor gleaming. "You dare threaten us? Our smallest scout ship could destroy your largest military base. We have technology you cannot even imagine." "That's where you're wrong," Miller replied. "We've been watching your empire for decades. We know your capabilities. We know your weaknesses. We chose to stay hidden, to develop in our own way." The Grand Chancellor stood up, his patience wearing thin. "Enough of this foolishness. You have two options: submit to imperial rule or face extinction. Choose wisely, human." Miller pulled out a small device from his pocket. The Empire's guards instantly raised their weapons, but he simply pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing a vast fleet of ships, but not Empire ships. They were human vessels, designs the Empire had never seen before. "This fleet," Miller explained, "is just one of many we have ready. While you focused on maintaining your power, we focused on innovation. While you relied on your ancient technology, we pushed the boundaries of science." The war minister scoffed. "Illusions and tricks. You think you can fool us with holograms?" Miller pressed another button. Suddenly, every piece of technology in the chamber, from the floating platforms to the environmental controls, shut down. The Empire officials found themselves in darkness, their advanced systems useless. "That was a small demonstration." Miller's voice cut through the darkness. "A tiny taste of our capabilities. We didn't come here to negotiate. We came to warn you." The system slowly came back online. The Grand Chancellor's face showed rage, but also a flicker of uncertainty. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced something it didn't understand. "You have 24 hours to withdraw all Empire forces from Earth's space," Miller stated. "After that, we will consider any Empire ship in our territory as an act of war." "This is outrageous," the war minister shouted. "We will crush your civilization." Miller turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "You know what's interesting? Every species you've conquered so far begged for mercy. They pleaded for peace at any cost. But we're different. We're not begging. We're warning." As Miller walked out, the Empire officials burst into angry discussions. The Grand Chancellor sat back on his throne, deep in thought. For the first time in his long life, he felt a sense of unease. Outside the chamber, Miller contacted Earth's United Defense Council. Message delivered. They reacted exactly as expected. "Did they believe our warning?" came the response. Miller smiled grimly. "No, and that's exactly what we counted on. Prepare the defense fleets. The Empire's pride won't let them back down." As his ship left the Empire's capital world, Miller watched through the viewport as military vessels began mobilizing. The Empire was preparing for what they thought would be an easy conquest. They didn't realize they were about to face something they had never encountered before. Humanity at its full potential. The first shots of a war that would change the galaxy forever were about to be fired. Humanity had given its warning. Now they would show the Empire why they should have listened. The Empire's first attack fleet emerged from hyperspace near Earth's orbit. 5,000 ships, each the size of a small city, filled the void of space. Their golden hulls gleamed in the sunlight as they moved into attack formation. Admiral Brown of the Empire stood on his flagship's bridge, smirking as he watched Earth on the main screen. "Such a small planet to cause so much trouble," he said to his officers. "Begin the invasion sequence. Show these humans the might of our empire." But something was wrong. His tactical officer looked confused, staring at the sensor readings. "Sir, we're not detecting any defense fleet. No orbital stations. No weapon platforms. Nothing." The admiral frowned. "Impossible. Scan again." Suddenly, a single human voice came through their communication systems. "This is Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. Turn back now." Admiral Brown laughed. "One last chance to surrender, humans. Where is your mighty fleet that you bragged about? Look up." The Empire fleet's sensors suddenly came alive. Hundreds of small objects were falling from above their position. Simple metal containers, barely the size of escape pods. The Empire officers watched in confusion. "These are their weapons." The tactical officer scoffed. "They're dropping metal boxes at us." Admiral Brown started to reply, but his words turned to ash in his mouth as the first container opened. A small black sphere emerged, and space itself seemed to twist around it. The nearest Empire ship, a heavy cruiser, was suddenly crushed like a paper ball, its advanced shields useless against the gravitational weapon. "All ships, open fire." Brown screamed, but it was too late. More containers were opening, releasing their deadly cargo. Each black sphere created a localized gravity, well so powerful it turned mighty Empire warships into compressed balls of metal. From behind Earth's moon, the human fleet finally appeared. Their ships were smaller than the Empire's vessels, but they moved with incredible speed and precision. Leading them was the HFY Thunder, commanded by Admiral Mark. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Mark ordered calmly. "Remember your training. These aren't the practice runs anymore." Human vessels darted between the confused Empire ships. Their weapons weren't the expected lasers or plasma. Instead, they fired streams of antimatter that ate through Empire shields like they weren't even there. Admiral Brown watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. Impossible. They're savages. They shouldn't have this technology. A third of his fleet was already destroyed. Another third was trapped in the artificial gravity wells, being crushed into oblivion. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but found their hyperspace drives wouldn't activate. "Did you think we wouldn't study your jump technology?" Admiral Mark's voice came through their systems again. "We've created a localized field that prevents hyperspace travel. You're not going anywhere." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 30 minutes. When it was over, only Admiral Brown's flagship remained, surrounded by the debris of his once mighty fleet. On the HFY Thunder's bridge, Admiral Mark opened a channel to the surviving Empire ship. "We warned you. This was just our orbital defense force, our smallest military branch. Imagine what our main fleet will do." Brown's voice trembled as he responded. We surrender. Please." "No," Mark replied coldly. "You don't get to surrender yet. You get to go home and tell your leaders exactly what happened here. Tell them how their primitive humans destroyed their best fleet. Tell them what's coming for them." As the Empire flagship limped away from Earth, Mark contacted Defense Command. "First wave repelled. Casualties?" "0, sir. Not a single human loss." Mark nodded, watching the Empire ship disappear into the distance. "They'll be back, with a bigger fleet next time." "We'll be ready, sir. Research Division has already developed new weapons based on the data from this battle." In his private quarters later, Mark reviewed the battle footage. The Empire had fought exactly as human intelligence had predicted: arrogant, inflexible, relying on overwhelming force rather than strategy. They had never adapted their tactics in 10,000 years because they'd never needed to. But now they faced humanity, a species that had turned warfare into an art form, that had developed technologies specifically to counter the Empire's strengths, a species that had spent decades preparing for this very moment. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy why they should have heeded that first warning. Deep in Empire space, an alarm blared through their largest supply depot. Security forces rushed to their stations, but by the time they arrived, the human ships had already vanished, along with half of the depot's antimatter fuel reserves. "Another hit and run," growled High Commander Rex, slamming his fist on the command table. 3 raids in 1 week. How are they moving so fast? The Empire's central command room buzzed with activity as reports flooded in from across their territory. Human strike teams were hitting everywhere at once. Supply lines, communication relays, fuel stations, never staying long enough for a real fight, just striking and disappearing. Commander Jack of the human stealth ship, Ghost, watched the chaos through his vessel's cloaking field. "Team, mark another successful raid. Let's head home." But instead of using conventional space lanes, the Ghost seemed to slit between the fabric of space itself. The Empire's sensors couldn't track what they couldn't understand. Humans had developed short-range dimensional shift technology, allowing their ships to briefly exist in a parallel space. Back at the Empire's capital, their war council was in shambles. "How do we fight an enemy we cannot catch?" demanded one general. "Their ships are too small, too fast. When we send large fleets, they avoid us. When we split up to chase them, they destroy our ships one by one." On the human side, Commander Jack's fleet gathered at their hidden base in an asteroid field. "Report on today's operations," he ordered. His second-in-command pulled up a holographic map. "We've disrupted 70% of their supply lines in this sector. Their larger ships are running low on fuel, forced to stay near their main bases, just as planned." The humans had studied the Empire's logistics for years. They knew the massive Imperial ships required enormous amounts of fuel and supplies. By cutting off these supplies, they forced the Empire to concentrate their forces, leaving many sectors undefended. "Sir," a young officer called out, "Empire response fleet detected. 300 ships, heading this way." Jack smiled. "Right on schedule. All ships, initiate Protocol Phantom." When the Empire fleet arrived at the asteroid field, they found nothing. No base, no ships, not even debris. Unknown to them, the entire human base had shifted into parallel space, watching as the frustrated Empire ships searched in vain. "They waste so much fuel looking for us," Jack noted. "That's fuel they can't use to defend their territories." Meanwhile, across Empire space, more human strike teams were in action. Some ships would appear just long enough to be detected, drawing Empire forces into wild chases. Others would strike at undefended targets, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. The Empire's rigid command structure couldn't adapt to this new style of warfare. Their ships were built for large-scale battles, not this constant game of cat and mouse. Every time they developed a strategy to counter human tactics, the humans would change their approach. "Sir," Jack's tactical officer reported, "Empire forces are starting to cannibalize their own ships for fuel. Their supply situation is getting desperate." Jack nodded. "Phase 1 is complete then. Time for Phase 2. Contact all strike teams." The next stage of human strategy began. Instead of just raiding supplies, they started leaving behind gifts, small packages of technology that looked like advanced Empire weapons. When Imperial forces found these, they eagerly began using them. What they didn't know was that each piece of technology contained hidden trackers and backdoors. Humans could now monitor Empire movements in real time. They still think they're the superior force, Jack told his crew. They don't realize that every move they make plays into our hands. Every new weapon they find makes them more vulnerable. The Empire's massive war machine, built over thousands of years, was being dismantled piece by an enemy they couldn't pin down. Their mighty fleets were reduced to sitting in defensive formations, watching helplessly as humans struck at will. "Send word to command," Jack ordered. "The Empire's military is ready for Phase 3. Their forces are scattered, low on supplies, and their morale is breaking. Time to show them what a real human fleet can do." The guerrilla phase of the war was ending. Soon, humanity would reveal why they had been called the most dangerous species in the galaxy. In the heart of the Empire's central AI complex, warning lights flashed across every screen. Their most advanced artificial intelligence system, which had managed their military operations for centuries, was acting strangely. "Status report," demanded Chief Technology Officer Ray of the Empire. "What's happening to the defense network?" A technician frantically worked at his console. "Sir, the AI it's making decisions we didn't program. It's ordering our fleet to strange positions." Deep within Earth's Cyber Command Center, Captain Steve and his team of hackers watched their plan unfold. After months of careful probing, they had finally found a way into the Empire's supposedly unhackable systems. "Look at them scramble," Steve said, watching through hijacked security feeds. They never imagined anyone could breach their quantum encryption. The Empire's entire military network relied on their AI for coordination. Every ship, every weapon, every defense system was connected. They had thought this integration was their strength. Now it was becoming their greatest weakness. "Sir," one of Steve's team members called out, "Phase 1 complete. We have control of their drone fighters." On screens across the command center, thousands of Empire combat drones suddenly turned against their own ships. The Empire's commanders watched in horror as their automated defenses began targeting their own vessels. "Shut it down." Ray screamed at his technicians, "Shut everything down." But it was too late. The Empire had become so dependent on their AI that their officers didn't know how to operate systems manually. As they tried to regain control, human cyber teams pushed deeper into their networks. "Remember," Steve told his team, "we're not just here to destroy. Download everything. Their research, their star charts, their classified files. Everything." The Empire had spent millennia gathering knowledge from across the galaxy. Now, in a matter of hours, humans were stealing it all. Their overconfidence in their security had left backdoors that Steve's team exploited mercilessly. In orbit around the Empire's core worlds, their mighty defense platforms suddenly powered down. Communication networks between planets fell silent. Transportation systems ground to a halt. The Empire was being systematically disconnected from itself. "Sir," Ray reported to the Empire's high command, "we've lost control of 80% of our automated systems. The humans, they're not just shutting things down, they're taking control." The Empire's leaders had never faced this kind of warfare before. Their ships could still fight, but without the AI coordination, they were far less effective. Their troops could still march, but without automated logistics, they couldn't be supplied properly. Back in Cyber Command, Steve received a priority message. "Captain, the Empire is trying to isolate their critical systems. They're cutting network connections." Steve smiled. "Too late. Show them what we planted during Phase 1. Across Empire space, hidden programs activated. Even systems that had been disconnected from the network suddenly began displaying the same message. "We warned you." "Report from our field agents," another team member announced. "Empire military bases are in chaos. Their weapons won't fire. Their doors won't open. Some bases are getting locked inside their own fortifications." The Empire's technological superiority, maintained for thousands of years, was being turned against them. Every system they tried to restart was already compromised. Every backup they activated contained human viral code. "Sir," one of Steve's analysts called out, We're detecting multiple Empire ships trying to revert to ancient manual controls. Let them, Steve replied. Their crews haven't used manual controls in generations. They'll be lucky if they can maintain basic life support. In the Empire's central AI complex, Ray watched helplessly as millennia of technological development was rendered useless in a single day. Their eye wasn't just compromised. It was being reprogrammed to serve human interests. Send word to all commands, he said quietly. We have to abandon all networked systems. Return to analog operations. The Empire was being forced back to technology they hadn't used in thousands of years. Meanwhile, human forces, operating on completely different technological principles, remained unaffected. Steve sent his final report to Earth Command. Empire's technological infrastructure neutralized. They're running on backup systems from 10 centuries ago. Ready for Phase 5. The intelligence war was over. The Empire had just learned that humans hadn't spent centuries catching up to their technology. They'd spent it learning how to turn it against them. In the Empire's main research facility, lead scientist Max stared at the wreckage of a human vessel they had finally managed to capture. His research team had been studying it for weeks, but each answer only led to more questions. Impossible, he muttered, looking at his analysis results. This ship's technology, it's completely different from the one we examined last month. The Empire's Science Council gathered around a massive holographic display showing battles from the past 3 months. Each engagement revealed new human weapons, new defenses, new tactics. It was as if they were fighting a different enemy each time. Their ships are evolving, one council member noted. Look at this footage. The human vessel takes damage, but in the next battle, all ships of that class have additional armor in that exact spot. On the human side, aboard the research vessel, Innovator, Chief Engineer Anna reviewed the latest combat data. Her team worked around the clock, implementing improvements almost in real time. The Empire still hasn't figured it out, she said to her team. They think we're using different ships. They don't understand we're upgrading our existing ones after every battle. While Empire ships remained unchanged, built to designs that were centuries-old, human vessels were constantly being modified. Combat data was instantly analyzed by AI systems, improvements were designed, and new components were fabricated and installed between engagements. Report from the front lines, an aide announced. The Empire's trying to copy our gravity weapons from last month. Anna smiled. Too late. We've already moved on to something better. The Empire's scientists couldn't keep up. Their research methods were methodical but slow, requiring years of testing before implementing any changes. Humans, on the other hand, had perfected rapid prototyping and real-world testing. In orbit around a contested planet, an Empire fleet commander watched in frustration as human ships demonstrated yet another new technology. Their weapons now phased through Empire shields, as if they weren't even there. How? He demanded. We developed countermeasures for their last attack method. How do they have something new already? Back in the Empire's research facility, Max presented his findings to the High Command. The humans, they're not just using advanced technology. They're advancing their technology during the war itself. Every battle teaches them. Every engagement makes them stronger. The Empire leaders couldn't grasp this concept. Their civilization had achieved what they thought was technological perfection centuries ago. The idea of constant change, constant improvement, was foreign to them. On the Innovator, Anna's team prepared to roll out their latest advancement. The Empire finally developed a defense against our phase weapons, she announced. So we're skipping right past that. Introducing quantum entanglement missiles. Her engineering crews worked with practiced efficiency, upgrading their fleet's weapon systems. What would take the Empire years to implement, humans could do in days. They still don't understand why they're losing, one of Anna's engineers commented. They think if they can just copy our technology, they'll win. That's their biggest mistake, Anna replied. By the time they copy something, we've already made it obsolete. The Empire's rigid hierarchy and bureaucratic approach to research couldn't match humanity's adaptability. While Empire scientists needed approval from multiple councils to make the smallest change, human engineers were encouraged to experiment and innovate freely. Max watched another battle recording, seeing human ships using technologies that seemed to defy physics itself. His research team had finally decoded how their last weapon worked, only to find the humans weren't even using it anymore. "We need to change our entire approach," he told the Science Council. "At this rate, by the time we understand their current technology, they'll be 5 generations ahead." But the Empire couldn't change. Their entire civilization was built on stability and consistency. The concept of constant evolution was as alien to them as their original technology had been to humans. Anna received word that the Empire was trying to adapt some of their older innovations. "Let them," she said. "By the time they figure those out, we'll have changed the rules of warfare itself." The innovation gap wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about 2 fundamentally different approaches to progress. The Empire had stopped advancing long ago, while humanity had never stopped learning, never stopped improving. The war was becoming a lesson in evolution, and the Empire was being left behind. The Empire's Grand Council chamber had never been so quiet. On the massive central display, a weapon of unimaginable power took shape. The Planet Breaker, their ultimate creation. "This will end the war," declared War Minister Ben, his voice echoing through the chamber. "One shot from this weapon will crack a planet to its core. Earth will surrender when they see it." The Empire had poured its remaining resources into this final weapon. A cannon so large it required its own artificial star to power it. They had built it in secret, hidden behind a dark nebula where human scouts couldn't find it. "Begin the operation," Ben ordered. "Set course for Earth. Show these humans what true power looks like." But on Earth's primary defense station, General Rick watched the Empire's secret weapon emerge from its hiding place. Humans had known about it for months, letting the Empire waste time and resources building it. "They're so predictable," Rick said to his staff. "Always thinking bigger is better. Always believing raw power will save them." The Planet Breaker moved slowly through space, its massive form requiring hundreds of support ships just to maintain its course. The Empire had built it too large to use hyperspace travel. It would take weeks to reach Earth. "Sir," an officer reported to Rick, "Project Prometheus is ready. Should we proceed?" Rick nodded. "Let them get a little closer. Let them think they have hope." The Empire fleet surrounding their superweapon was confident. They had suffered defeats, but surely nothing could stand against this. Their sensors showed no human fleet gathering to oppose them, no defensive preparations. As the Planet Breaker came within firing range of Earth's outer colonies, War Minister Ben prepared to demonstrate its power. Target their largest colony. Show them what awaits Earth itself. The weapon's massive barrel began to glow. Energy readings went off the scale. The Empire crews waited for the moment of triumph. Then everything went dark. Not just the weapon. Space itself seemed to darken around them. Stars disappeared. Their sensors showed nothing but void. "What's happening?" Ben demanded. "Why can't we see anything?" Rick's voice came through their communications, calm and clear. "Did you really think we would let you build a super weapon without leaving our own surprises inside?" The darkness surrounding the Empire fleet wasn't empty. Thousands of tiny devices, secretly installed during the weapon's construction, activated simultaneously. Each one created a microscopic black hole, carefully controlled and positioned. "Impossible," Ben shouted. "You can't control gravity at this level." "Minister," Rick replied, "you still don't understand. We haven't been fighting you with our best weapons. We've been studying you, learning your weaknesses. Everything until now was just practice." The black holes began to multiply and merge. The Planet Breaker, the Empire's ultimate weapon, was being torn apart at the atomic level. Their mighty fleet was caught in a web of artificial gravity wells, unable to escape. "This is Project Prometheus," Rick explained, "named after the myth of stolen fire. But we didn't steal your fire, Minister. We learned to make our own. and it burns much, much hotter. The Empire crews watched in horror as their ships were pulled apart. The planet breaker, their last hope, collapsed in on itself, becoming part of the very void it had hoped to master. You could have run, Rick continued. We gave you that chance at the start. Now you get to watch as we take apart everything you built, piece by piece. In the Grand Council chamber, the Empire's leaders received the final transmission from their dying fleet. They had committed their best ships, their best troops, their most advanced technology to this weapon. Now it was all gone. One last chance. Rick's voice echoed through their chamber. Surrender, or we'll demonstrate Project Prometheus on your capital worlds next. The Empire's mighty weapon, their ultimate solution, had become their greatest defeat. They had tried to break a planet, only to learn that humans had learned to break space itself. The war was entering its final phase, and humanity was done holding back. The Empire's Grand Palace, which had stood for 10,000 years, now served as the site for their unconditional surrender. The once proud Empire leaders sat quietly as human representatives walked into the historic chamber. Admiral Rick, now representing Earth's United Defense Council, stood before the Empire's assembled leadership. The same chamber that had once mocked humanity's first warning now fell silent at his presence. The terms are simple, Rick stated, his voice carrying across the vast hall. Your military will be disbanded. Your worlds will be free to govern themselves. The Empire, as it has existed, ends today. The Grand Chancellor, his metallic skin dulled with age and defeat, signed the surrender document with trembling hands. We still don't understand, he said quietly. How did you defeat us so completely? Rick walked to the chamber's window, looking out at the capital city. Your Empire's greatest weakness was its own success. You stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped adapting. You thought you had reached perfection. Outside, human ships patrolled peacefully alongside former Empire vessels. The war had ended not with Earth's destruction, but with a complete reformation of galactic society. Your civilization will not be destroyed, Rick continued. That's not our way. Instead, we'll help you rebuild, help you remember how to innovate again, how to grow. In the following weeks, human advisors spread throughout the former Empire's worlds. They brought not just new technology, but new ideas. The rigid hierarchy that had stifled progress for millennia began to crumble. On one former Empire world, a young alien student watched in amazement as a human teacher demonstrated how to think creatively, how to question established facts, how to experiment with new possibilities. The Empire taught us that perfection had been achieved. The student said, but you humans teach us that perfection is impossible, that there's always room for improvement. The human response teams were surprised to find how quickly the former Empire worlds adapted to change once their old restrictions were removed. Centuries of suppressed creativity and innovation began to flourish. In Earth's main command center, Rick reviewed reports from across the reformed galaxy. Other alien races are reaching out to us, he told his staff. They watched how we handled the Empire. They want to learn from us. The victory hadn't just ended the Empire's rule. It had revolutionized galactic society. Humans became teachers, advisors, and partners to civilizations that had once looked down on them as primitives. The Empire's greatest mistake, Rick explained to a gathering of alien representatives, wasn't challenging us. It was assuming that because their civilization was older, it was better. Age doesn't guarantee wisdom. Adaptation and growth do. Former Empire scientists worked alongside human researchers, learning not just new technologies but new ways of thinking. The innovation gap that had decided the war became a bridge for cooperation. We don't want to create a human empire, Rick assured the gathered species. We want to create a galaxy where every civilization can grow, where progress never stops, where cooperation replaces conquest. The same AI systems that humans had once hacked were now being reprogrammed to serve all species equally. The weapons that had won the war were transformed into tools for exploration and development. A year after the surrender, the former Grand Chancellor visited Earth for the first time. Standing in New York City, watching the busy streets filled with humans and aliens working together, he finally understood. "Your warning wasn't just about military power," he said to Rick. "You were trying to tell us that our entire way of thinking was wrong. That staying still means falling behind." Rick nodded. "The universe is too big, too complex for any civilization to stop learning, to stop growing. The moment you think you've reached the peak is the moment you begin to fall." The war that had started with a warning had ended with a lesson. Humanity had proved itself not just the most powerful species, but perhaps the wisest, not because they knew everything, but because they never stopped trying to learn more. As the galaxy entered a new age of cooperation and progress, the Empire became a reminder of an important truth. True strength lies not in maintaining power, but in the constant pursuit of improvement. The warning had been given. The lesson had been learned, and the galaxy would never be the same again.